Before we take our first question, I thought it would be interesting just to get the initial thoughts from our panelists. Perhaps Mike, would you like to kick off?
Yeah, happy to. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I think Matthew touched on several key points, really, and so much that we are looking at a very severe impact on higher education and higher education catering in particular from our regard. The return to campus, which is hoped for September, which is great news, but it will be a slow return, and significantly more numbers we're looking at for the next calendar year. So that's going to have quite a significant knock-on effect to the supply chains that we're operating and the framework agreements that we're at. And there's still so much that's quite unknown at the moment. We're looking at adapting to a shorter social distancing, which is going to be really crucial, not just for catering, but for how teaching is delivered and how numbers can get back to campus. But looking ahead, I think it's one thing is for certain, that we are going to be looking at something quite different when we return to work. And Matthew also hit on technology and innovation. And I think they're really crucial things that we're going to have to look at. And I was on a call with a colleague this morning, and we were talking about, this is with regards to TUCO's learning and development activities, which are going to change dramatically. We are naturally going to have to embrace the digital era, which we're doing right now, but we're also going to have to remain extremely agile, as our members will be, and embrace things which haven't even been thought of yet. So whilst we're looking at what we can do right now, I think as other people adapt very quickly and deliver innovative solutions, then we're going to have to be able to be very agile and quick to embrace those, to deliver a new form of service to both all our members and our members to the students. Sure,
okay. Alison, your thoughts on what Matt said?
I'm a little bit worried about lentil and mushroom lasagna, to be honest, but yeah, I think from Matt's quite right that we will get over this, and there will be a time when we'll get back to a different sort of normal. But I think for me, it's about the start of term is going to look very, very different than maybe next term, next September. And it is about preserving, making sure that we do the best we can at the start of term, but make sure it's commercially viable. And I think that the next 12 months are going to be a real challenge for university catering with regards sort of the commercial elements of that. Because as Matthew says, we bring in a lot of income, and that income won't be there, certainly not for this year. And for me, it's about maintaining financial stability whilst keeping our best people and delivering an exceptional student experience in these really challenging times.
Sure, thank you very much. And Calum, what are your concerns looking at the sort of next few months?
Yeah, well, all of the above.
Yeah.
Matt and Mike particularly make a comment about changes in agile service delivery. Now, many of us have been speaking about service reviews, how we can be more efficient, and that's been a subject heading that's been on the agenda for longer than many would like to admit. We're now in a situation whereby we're being compelled to make changes or suffer from stagnating. So the changes will be made, but there'll be lasting changes as well. I have no doubt that Aberdeen will reflect what will happen elsewhere in the country, in that the changes will be made. It'll be a more dynamic team, if I can use that in a positive way. The team members will be flexible in their approach to tasks that need to be undertaken. And the changes we make today, where it maybe requires, at the moment, 6 individuals to service an outlet, going forward in Aberdeen, that will be 3, and it won't go back, it will be 3 going forward. So it's how then, and I made a note here, Julia Taylor in Newcastle asks a question, we'll maybe come to that during the discussion, but there'll come a point quite soon where we talk about the structure and number of colleagues that we have in our respective areas, and what do they do? Is there a purpose for them elsewhere within the organisation at large? So there's a huge amount ahead. I think the challenges that we face are faced by everybody in the service sector, We have a wee advantage that we don't actually have to start delivering services until the autumn, so we can watch and learn from those that are having to make the changes right now.
Okay, thank you very much. Matt, just picking up on the point that Calum alluded to there. Julia's question was, when do you think universities should be having discussions on staffing levels? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, as I said in the interview, this is going to be a slow burn for us, because although we will see, I think, a big influx of students for the start of the academic year, e.g. in September, there will be a very slow burn, I think, in terms of the number of international students that arrive. And the international community makes up a huge proportion of what we do. I mean, that does differ at different institutions. I know that in Manchester, it's a very high proportion. At Reading, we're talking about sort of 30% of our overall makeup. That's going to mean that we're going to have to, as Alison said, match revenue to, you know, our cost base. It has to be a sustainable model. Universities are not being bailed out by this government, and there is no saving safety net. What we take through the till is what we can then expand upon the resources that we use to deliver our services. And unfortunately, the main cost is HR costs. So we will have to look at this. Those of us that are going to be agile are going to have to be agile and on the front foot now. And we have to plan for what we're going to open, what we're going to, you know, be able to do with things like the furlough scheme. So, you know, only this morning I was in a meeting where we're talking about trying to leave people on furlough for as long as we possibly can and stagger the number of staff that we bring back to facilitate the start of the academic year. The key trick is going to be putting the show on, but with slightly less resource, because we know the income isn't going to be there.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Alison, this balancing act, particularly tricky for city centre universities. We had another question about should you try and open them all at the start, or perhaps just a limited number? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, here at Manchester, we're like many universities, the students are going to be taught mainly online. There will be tutorials and small seminars on campus. And also many of our staff who are not essential will not be encouraged to come on campus. So like Matt was saying in the interview, you know, we're going to have a very a campus of population that's normally over 50,000, severely shrunk. With social distancing, again, we've looked at our 25 cafes on campus, and there's only about 18 that we could physically operate with social distancing. So we've had to look at, you know, what we will keep open, and the size and shape of my department in the retail area will certainly look a lot different than it would have done last September. Just because, you know, financially we just, you know, we cannot afford to have cafes operating that are going to deliver at least a break even. You know, the universities, Matthew says, they're not going to subsidise us. Certainly Manchester will not subsidise their catering offer. So we are going to look different in size and shape, but we've got to make sure that how we do that, we actually build. We're able to rebuild, because it will get back at some point. As a result of that, Manchester has already opened a voluntary severance scheme for right across the university. And you know, and some voluntary measures as well, not just about people leaving, but taking reductions in hours and pay. So we are looking at that. And again, you know, catered halls, some capacities have been reduced because of social distancing. That reduces the revenue that we get within catered halls, because ours are very traditional. So they don't shop on campus for their food, they actually dine where they live. So that reduces the profitability of the catered halls as well. So yes, the department will look very different. And, you know, I was on campus today and Pret-a-Manger was open, but there's little straddlers of people. But, you know, we've got the Co-op, Sainsbury's, Morrison's, we've got Pret a Manger, we've got Brewdog, we've got Caffè Nero that are not university operated. So and you know, McDonald's just down the road. So with all the best will in the world, it's going to be tough.
Okay, thank you. Mike, a question now about how TUCO is adapting its own sort of advice and guidance for members as the situation changes. I mean, we know, for instance, that from this Saturday, the sort of social distancing rules are being relaxed down from 2 meters to 1 meter.
It's very difficult. I mean, the social distancing is still at 2 meters where you can do, but where it's not possible to do so, then it can be reduced. We have some guidance coming out within the next few days on how to safely reopen sort of food service in terms of kitchens and retail as well. But I think what we've all experienced over the previous few months is that things are changing so quickly that planning is becoming more and more difficult. And prior to this call, we were chatting with Alison, and she said we've actually had to stop planning now because it's almost from one day to another, something is changing. And that's why I think everybody, and our members in particular, just have to remain very, very adaptable, and we will deal with the ever-changing circumstances, because if you speak to the optimistic people, then we may return to some closer form of normality at the start of term. But if you speak to a more pessimistic person, then universities could be shut for the time being. So we have to deal with all eventualities. As I say, we do have guidance out, but that's more around how to make safe the reopening of the food services.
Okay, thank you. Calum, can I turn to you now? We've got a question from Dewey Morgan asking about the mix between high street branded restaurants delivering student meals and you developing your own in-house options. What do you see that going?
Well, I think probably Alison, more than most, feels the pain in trying to compete with well-established brands held in high regard by the very demographic that we provide for. We can have the best production team in the kitchens, we can have the best service teams in the kitchen, but in some instances, if it doesn't have Starbucks in the title, or KFC, or Pret a Manger, or Wagamama's, it's a hard sell. Young people, students, they know what they want. To some extent, cost is immaterial. If they want it, they'll find the money to buy it. So what's going to happen in the weeks and months ahead? There's lots of questions coming through on the chat that on the face of it, they look really simple. But when you think about what's being asked, it's a really complex answer. So there'll be a slim down in terms of what the Aberdeen University will provide. It'll be a cut down offer. It'll still be, with respect to my colleagues, it will still be sector leading. Particularly when compared with St Andrews, will be much better in that respect, my colleagues from St Andrews. The menus have to be reduced because we have less people to produce the items, and of course we're going to have less time to serve and sell the food. So we might see populations reduced by, say, 50%, but revenues will reduce by more because we won't be able to process the same number of students in the time that we have. So we might see revenues reduce even more than the 50% in student numbers. So the high street brand will continue to play an important part for the students' social experience of the student diet. We just have to work especially hard in the coming months to ensure that our product is attractive, is aggressively priced, and is appealing, and that it has a legitimate part to play in the experience of students on campus.
Okay, thank you. Alison?
I'd just like to add on to that, really, is that I think that the people that we employ, who the frontline staff, our hospitality service assistants who serve the students their barista coffee, or they see every morning in the school and have a chat, I think they are really important part of what we provide within university catering. You know, the comments that I get back about those individuals in those outlets that make the day for the student who's coming in every morning and seeing Sarah on the counter, has a chat with them, and becomes their friend for the year, and a friendly face. And for all the best will in the world, I don't think the high street brands can do that. I think that's what we deliver is unique about is what our people deliver as in-house operators.
Okay, thank you. Actually, Alison, I was going to turn to you with a couple of people have come up with questions about single-use plastic and the use of disposables. That obviously that was going one way before COVID came in and changed everything, and people are a little bit worried about how that was going to affect sustainability targets and also the acceptability to the students themselves of increased use of single-use plastics and such like.
It's a really difficult one, isn't it? It's where do we go? I think there has been some debate about the refill scheme, and I think we're going to brave it at Manchester and actually continue with our refill scheme, certainly for hot drinks. We're definitely going to do that, I think. And we've always at Manchester had most of our cafes and restaurants use takeaway and disposables, and we're constantly looking at what's available on the market that is the best option. And there's a massive debate about using plant-based against rPET and all sorts, and we continue to get it right and then get it wrong and then get it right. I think students will be quite vocal about that, but we will also, where practical, we will use crockery and cutlery where we can. So we'll keep a close eye on it, but and we'll do our best to not use where we can. But I think because they've been used to that for the last 3 months. I live in central Manchester, and you get in takeaways. All the young people are going and getting a takeaway. Deliveroo cyclists have never been that busy, and they're being delivered in disposables. So I think young people will be accepting of it, but will challenge us when we need to be challenged.
Okay, thank you. Matt, I've got a question from Michael Lloyd, who says, how will the need for increased hygiene impact on your catering operations? Will you be looking for sachets to replace multi-use bottles of ketchup, salt shakers, etc.?
Well, currently that's being mandated, so yes, is the answer. The reality of that is we'll do everything, as Alison's just said, we'll do everything we can to innovate around getting away from that. I mean, that's not a sustainable answer. It's not going to be acceptable to our audience. Our customer base is so demanding in terms of environmental impacts that we will have to find ways around those things. And, we will be looking to the supply chain as well to innovate. Because I was talking about water coolers this morning, water fountains. One supplier has come forward with a foot pedal operation for them to prevent the need for people to touch them. We're going to have to think about that with sauce dispensers and things. I'm not necessarily saying a foot dispenser version. I mean, you can imagine this huge ketchup. But, there does need to be some innovation around those things. And I mean, at the moment you can dispense, for example, hand sanitizer without touching anything. You just put your hands to it. I'm sure you can put a plate under and a dollop of ketchup will arrive. So, there's got to be ways around these things. And, that's what goes back to the interview. We don't say no, we find a way to do everything. We get a big yes.
So, quite interesting in a way, some of the innovations we can look forward to answer some of these questions. Calum, I've got a question maybe I can put your way from Richard Greensmith of Derby, who says, the main question is, how are caterers changing their food operation in light of COVID, and how are they balancing this with the student experience and expectations?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it reflects similar questions being asked elsewhere in the chat. In addition to that question there, what we're being asked is, will caterers be looking to put new products in front of students? Will caterers be looking to continue to provide gluten-free options for students because it's more expensive? And the answer is always a hybrid, complex approach. We are, as I said earlier, Aberdeen, like many institutions, reviewing the menus, shrinking them down, certainly for the first semester, by offering a slightly reduced choice, ensuring the quality is there and the variety is there. But instead of a menu running to a dozen items, it might have 3 or 4 really well-made options that are conveniently packaged, that can be presented well and add value. And during Matt's presentation, he talked about packaging to add value, to add to the experience. So it's not just a cardboard box or a tinfoil tray where it's nondescript grey meat is thrown into, that the packaging forms part of the experience and adds that value. In terms of new products in front of students, that's a difficult one, because as Alison said earlier, and Matt emphasised it, we're in the business of generating a surplus. And in order to do that, there'll be some safe decisions taken. So in the main, we'll be offering products that we know that sell. We'll go to the top 10 soft cabinets and we'll make sure they're available. We'll go to the top 10 confectionery bars. We'll go to the top 10 snacks. So innovation in the first, not innovation, that's not fair. New products in the first few weeks might be thin on the ground, but again, as Matt says, we have a very demanding public, a very demanding customer, and they will want variety. They will want what is Instagrammable. There's a great word. I never thought I'd use it, but they will want something that is appealing on a whole raft of levels that 3 or 4 years ago just we didn't figure. So we have to reflect those demands. In the main, I wanted to ask or comment to the disposables or single-use items.
Sure.
And reusable, if I could. In recent days, a colleague has forwarded an internal document from Costa about their approach to reusable mugs and how they're going to see them reintroduced, certainly in Aberdeen. From day one, welcome week, it will be largely single-use materials that we will use, but from day one, there will be a strong, clear message about reusables, about crockery, about cutlery, that the steps that we will take to ensure that their use, when reintroduced, will be appropriate and safe. So at the moment, we're aiming to reintroduce reusable cups and bottles and proper plates as an option from the end of October. Gloves is one that gets me. I just don't see, gloves and wipes, I personally don't see the part that they play in our safe delivery of services. And indeed, speaking with a colleague earlier today, we at the small University of Aberdeen, we're going to be generating hundreds of thousands of wipes a week in waste. When what's wrong with a spray bottle and a J-cloth and 30-second acting sanitizing spray? So we've got some real challenges in delivering safety and message. 3 words: perception, misunderstanding, and I forgot the third word. I wrote it down earlier, but I promise you there are 3 words whereby...
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, thanks. Service colleagues wearing gloves, the impression is that's adding a degree of safety. Yeah. To who? Why? So there's a great deal of misunderstanding and perception out there, and then sometimes we overreact and we are delivering services at a level that aren't sustainable. So I think in the short term, we will see a slowing down of the service levels that we provide.
Okay, thank you. Mike, we had another question in. Obviously, with all of the changes that you're discussing that are going to have to be made, do you anticipate that the sort of the equipment that's going to have to go into kitchens will change as a result of that? And have you any idea what sort of changes we might look forward to seeing?
Yeah, I tried to address that as briefly in the Q&A, but with a written response. I think it's very difficult to answer that right now, as I don't think we know what the kitchens are going to look like. And certainly, as I say, with regard to the energy efficiency and the capital investment and what have you being that was suggested, I think members are going to be looking at any and all ways of saving money. You know, we mentioned at the very top of this webinar that it's a very serious impact on all of our business, be it all of the people on here. Everybody's very effective. So cost saving is going to be high up on the priorities, but how we adapt to what the new services needs to be established before any of those decisions can be made, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you very much. It probably is a good opportunity now. We're getting quite close to the end of our allotted hour, but as I suggested at the beginning, we're quite happy to sort of run over a little bit longer for the sake of getting into some more comments from you. I'd be interested to go around and ask all of you now to do a little bit of crystal ball gazing and sort of look ahead, sort of not just in the sort of the next few months up until Christmas, but looking maybe sort of a year or two, maybe 3 years ahead, and give us some idea of how you see things, perhaps going back to what they were or how they might be changing into the future. Calum, how about you?
Yeah, I
kicking things off on this one.
Yeah, I'll make it brief. It's very topical. This morning I was part of, well, there was a webinar of the university principal and the finance director. I made a presentation to the university community about financial sustainability for the University of Aberdeen. And it's not all doom and gloom in terms of our return to financial normality. We are certainly looking at 3 years from now, before we're at a level where we're at just now. Up until now, the last couple of years, we've experienced considerable growth in our revenues. So falling back some isn't quite as impactful as it perhaps looks at first glance. So 3 years to recover. In terms of how we deliver services, as I said a wee while ago, what's happening right now will absolutely shape the way that we deliver all our services going forward. Self-service, click and collect, pre-order, all of that is going to play a much bigger part in the way that we operate going forward. Matt talks about machines not breaking down, or not being sick, being able to work 24 hours a day, not requiring pension contributions. There will be a significant, not this year, and in answer to a question earlier about buying equipment to generate energy savings, there's not going to be much in the way of capital investment in equipment this year. It's all about consolidating, hunkering down, and just getting through as best we can. Next year, there may well be opportunities to look further afield, but it'll be a slow and gradual crawl back to healthier days.
Okay, thank you. Alison, what's your view looking ahead?
It's not dissimilar to Calum's, to be honest. I think for this next financial year, ours starts in July, August, is going to be just get through the financial year and not cost the university any money. The back end of next year, we didn't really touch on sort of conferences and delivered catering, but I think they will start to drift back. We've certainly got bookings that with people keen to come back onto campus next summer, some even next Easter. So we see that the first half of the year is going to be a real massive financial struggle, and that hopefully we can get some return to normal incomes that will make sure that we're not a financial burden to the university. I think the following 2 years, again, as Matt said, that if numbers are down this year, that goes through right for the next 3 years. So we will have that reduction in student numbers for that period. But I'm hopeful that we will get back to a normal. I think the normal, as Calum says, will look very different because we've been innovative and we've had to be innovative, and some of those innovations will continue because they provide us with either an enhanced student experience or it's a financial cost saving for us. So and I think out of these sort of times you do get a huge amount of innovation, so and people will want to start experimenting again, but I think it's going to be a hard slog. But I think this next year, as the university caterers, we've got to work really, really hard, be really collaborative, and share best practice, and then hopefully in year 2 we can start building back up again.
Okay, thank you. Mike, thinking about TUCO as an organisation, how do you see the role that TUCO plays and some of the issues that you'll be facing over the next few years?
I think the role of TUCO will hopefully become even more important over the coming months and years. As Alison has just said, isolationism right now, other than if you've got COVID, is a bad thing to do, in my opinion. And the collaboration that is available through TUCO, the sharing of knowledge and experiences, will hopefully put us in good stead. There's no two ways that there's going to be a massive financial impact on the business, and we're budgeting for that. We're making decisions to address that. It's a knock-on effect for our business, what happens in the university, so we're planning for that 2 to 3 year serious impact, which we've done, and we're confident that we can get through. But we're going to continue to bring our members together. We'll be setting out a new sort of digital strategy, which will bring together in the short to medium term our members on a virtual basis, which we're already doing with our weekly webinars, and our regional meetings have been moved online. So we see the role as this organisation as being more important to universities and colleges and the wider public sector than it's ever been, to be honest with you. It's probably a bad time to be outside.
Good, okay. Matt, finally, if I can come to you. Your interview ended on a sort of a little bit of an optimistic note. I wonder whether you might just be prepared to expand slightly on that and give us a little bit of a cause for hope looking forward.
I think, fellow panelists have all touched on it. I mean, we are a community. TUCO is a family. We all learn from one another. We have weathered this storm together. I think, as Alison said, the webinars and things that we've hosted have allowed people to share perhaps some of the optimism, and then again, Calum occasionally brought us back down to earth with his outlook on the sort of things we might be doing commercially. And then we found that middle ground. And I think that, to be honest, we now are all in a different place. We know that we've laid some good foundations for the start of an academic year, and it will go on from there. As the song goes, the only way is up. I mean, from my perspective, we don't have a choice. We have to, if we're going to survive as individuals in terms of our own livelihoods, we need to make this work, and we will therefore make it work. And I think, one of the other things I touched on in the interview was that the public sector, the PS100, again, is a very important forum for us, because us joining into these webinars, listening to other parts of the sector, we've learned so much. Calum mentioned earlier, we're in a kind of lucky position to a degree that we don't need to really get going until perhaps September, October. A lot of our colleagues have been at this hard and fast for a long time now, and we've learned from some of the things that have worked for them and that haven't for others. And particularly the hospitals and schools and care homes, again, learning from them, working again with the supply chain and the framework partners, we'll win out in the end. We'll get there, and we'll continue delivering great products and services. So it's still the best sector to be in. We will absolutely triumph, and we'll deliver, and we'll have a great time doing it as well, even though we're all a bit knackered right now.
Okay. Right. Well, we have run over, as I suspected we might. So thank you to everyone who's stuck with us through all of this, and especially to our 4 TUCO members who've joined us today, Matt, Mike, Alison and Calum. Thank you very much for that, and to you for joining us. To remind you, there will be a full link to the recording of this webinar available on Monday on the Public Sector Catering website. Our next look at the future of your service webinar takes place on July the 16th, when Jane Jones, Chair of Assist FM, will join us to look at the challenges school meal providers face in Scotland. And lastly, a word of thanks to the suppliers who support the Public Sector Catering 100 group, and without whom events such as today's webinar would not be possible. You can see their names on the slide that follows. See you on July 16th. Goodbye.